So I'm reading from Terry Pratchett, Truckers, and this is extract 14. From the Book of Nome, Regulations verses 21 to 22. But Arnold Brothers, established 1905, said, "This is the sign I give you. If you do not see what you require, please ask." "She can't come," said Gerda. "Why not?" said Masklin. "Well, it's dangerous." "So?" Masklin looked at Grimmer, who was wearing a defiant expression. You shouldn't take girls anywhere dangerous," said Gerda virtuously. Once again, Masklin got the feeling he'd come to recognise quite often since he'd arrived in the store. They were talking. Their mouths were opening and shutting, and every word by itself was perfectly understandable. But then when they were all put together, they made no sense at all. The best thing to do was to ignore them. Back home, if women weren't to go anywhere dangerous, then they wouldn't go anywhere. "I'm coming," said Grimmer. "What danger is there anywhere? Only this price slasher and Arnold Brothers, established 1905, himself," said Gerda nervously. "Well, I'm going to come anyway. People don't need me and there's nothing else to do," said Grimmer. "What can happen anyway? It's not as if something terrible could happen," she added sarcastically, "like me reading something and my brain overheating, for example." "No, I'm sure I didn't say," said Gerda weakly. "I bet the stationery don't do their own washing," said Grimmer, "or darn their own socks. I bet—" all right, said Gerda, backing away. "But you mustn't lag behind. You mustn't get in the way. We'll make the decisions, all right?" He gave Masklin a desperate look. "You tell her she mustn't get in the way," he said. "Me?" said Masklin. "Well, I've never told her anything." The journey was less impressive than he'd expected. The old abbot had told of staircases that moved, of fire in buckets, of long empty corridors with nowhere to hide, but since then, of course, Dorcas had put the lifts in. They only went as far as Kitty's clothes and toys, but the Clovians were a friendly people who had adopted well to life on a high floor and always welcomed the rare travellers who came with tales of the world below. "They don't even come down to use the food hall," said Gerda. "They get everything they want from the staff rest room. They live on tea and biscuits mainly, and yoghurt." "How strange," said Grimmer. "They're very gentle," said Gerda, "very thoughtful, very quiet, a little bit mystical actually. It must be all that yoghurt and tea." "I don't understand about the fire in buckets though," said Masklin. Said Gerda. We think the old abbot might, we think his memory might, after all, he is extremely old." "You don't have to explain," said Grimmer. "Old Torrets can be a bit like that. It's just that his mind is not as sharp as it was," said Gerda. Masklin said nothing. It just seemed to him that if the abbot's mind was a bit blunt now, it must once have been sharp enough to cut through the breeze. The Clovians gave him a guide to take them through the outlying regions of the underfloor. There were few gnomes this high up. Most of them preferred the busy floors below. It was almost like being outside. Faint breezes blew the dust into grey drifts. There was no light except what filtered through from old cracks, and in the darkest places the guide had to light matches. He was a very small gnome. He smiled a lot in a shy way, but said nothing at all when Grimmer tried to talk to him. "Where are we going?" said Masklin, looking back at their deep footprints. "To the moving stair," said Gerda. "Move? How do they move? Bits of the store move around?" Gerda chuckled, patronisingly. "Of course. All this is new to you. You mustn't worry if you don't understand everything," he said. "Do they move or don't they?" said Grimmer. "You'll see. It's the only one we use, you know. It's a bit dangerous. You have to be topsides, you see. It's not like the lifts." The little Clovian pointed forward, bowed. and hurried away. Gerda led them up through a narrow crack in the ancient floorboards, into the bright emptiness of a passageway, and there, the moving stair. Masklin watched it hypnotically. Stairs rose out of the floor, squeaking eerily as they did so, and whirred up into the distant heights. "Wow," he said. It wasn't much, but it was all that he could think of. "The Clovians won't go near it," said Gerda. "They think it's haunted by spirits." "I don't blame them," said Grimmer, shivering. "Oh, it's just superstition," said Gerda. His face was white and there was a tremble in his voice. "There's nothing to be frightened of," he squeaked. Masklin peered at him. "Have you ever been here before?" he asked. "Oh, yes, millions of times, often," said Gerda, picking up a fold of his robe and twisting it between his fingers. "So what do we do now?" Gerda tried to speak slowly, but his voice began to go faster and faster of his own accord. "Well, you know, the Clovians say that Arnold Brothers established 1905 waits at the top, you know, and when gnomes die..." Grimmer looked reflectively at the rising stairs and shivered again. Then she ran forward. "What are you doing?" said Masklin. "Seeing if they're right," she snapped. "Otherwise we'll be here all day." Masklin ran after her. Gerda gulped, looked behind him, and scurried after both of them. Masklin saw her run towards the rising bulk of a stair, and then the floor below her came up, and she was suddenly rising, wobbling as she fought for balance. The floor below him pushed against his feet, and he rose after her, one step below. "Jump down!" he shouted. "You can't trust ground that moves by itself." Her pale face peered over the edge of the stair. "What good will that do?" she said. "Then we can go and talk about it." She laughed. "Go where? Have you looked down lately?" Masklin looked down. He was already several stairs up. The distant figure of Gerda, his face just a blob, screwed up his courage and jumped onto a step of his own. Arnold Brothers, established 1905, was not waiting at the top. It was simply a long brown corridor lined with doors. There were words painted on some of them. But Grimmer was waiting. Masklin waved a finger at her as he staggered off his stair, which mysteriously folded itself down into the floor. "Never, ever do anything like that again," he shouted. "If I hadn't, you'd still be at the bottom." You could see Gerda was scared out of his wits, she snapped. "But there could have been all sorts of dangers up here." "Like what?" said Grimmer haughtily. "Well, there could be..." Masklin hesitated. "That's not the point. The point is..." At this point, Gerda's stare rolled him almost to their feet. They picked him up. "There," said Grimmer brightly. "We're all here, and everything's perfectly all right, isn't it?" Gerda stared round him. Then he coughed and adjusted his clothes. "I lost my balance there," he said. "Tricky, these moving stairs, but you get used to them eventually." He coughed again, and then looked along the corridor. "Right. Well, we better get a move on," he said. The three gnomes crept forward, past the rows of doors. "Does one of these belong to Prices Slashed?" said Grimmer. Somehow the name sounded far worse up here. No," said Gerda. He dwells among the furnaces in the basement." He squinted up at the nearest door. "This one's called Salaries," he said. "Is that good or bad?" said Grimmer, staring at the word on the varnished wood. "Don't know." Masklin brought up the rear, turning slowly to keep all the corridor in view. It was too open. There was no cover. Nothing to hide behind. He pointed to a row of giant red things hanging halfway up the opposite wall. Gerda whispered that they were buckets. "There's pictures of them in Colin and Susan Go to the Seaside," he confided. "What's that written on them?" Gerda squinted. "Fire," he said. "Oh my, the abbot was right. Buckets of fire." "Fire in buckets," said Masklin. "Buckets of fire? I can't see any flames." "They must be inside. Perhaps there's a lid. There's beans in bean tins and jam in jam jars. There should be fire in fire buckets," said Gerda vaguely. Come on." Grimmer stared at this word too. Her lips moved silently as she repeated it to herself. Then she hurried after the other two. Eventually they reached the end of the corridor, and there was another door with glass in the top half. Gerda stared up at it. "I can see those words," said Grimmer. "Read them out." "I'd better not look at them," she added sweetly, "in case my brain goes bang." Gerda swallowed. "They say Arnold Brothers, established 1905. D.H.K. Butterthwaite, general manager. He's in there?" she said. "Well, there's beans in bean tins and fire in fire buckets," said Maskin helpfully. "The door's not shut. Look, want me to go and see?" Gerda nodded wretchedly. Maskin walked over to the door, leaned against it, and pushed it until his arms ached. Eventually, it swung in a little way. There was no light inside, but by the faint glow from the corridor through the glass, he could see he was entering a large room. The carpet was much thicker. It was like wading through grass. Several metres away was a large rectangular wooden thing. As he walked around it, he saw a chair behind it. Perhaps this was where Arnold Brothers, established 1905, sat. "Where are you, Arnold Brothers, established 1905? he whispered. Some minutes later, the other two heard him calling softly. They appeared round the door. "Where are you?" hissed Grimmer. "Up here," came Maslin's voice. "At this big wooden thing. There's sticking out bits you can climb on. There's all kinds of things up here. Careful of the carpet. There could be wild animals in it. If you wait a minute, I can help you up." They waded through the deep pile of a carpet and waited anxiously by the wooden cliff. "It's a desk," said Gerda loftily. "There's lots of them in furnishing. Amazing value and genuine 100% oak veneer." "What's he doing up there?" said Grimmer. I can hear clinking noises." "A must in every home," said Gerda, as if saying the words gave him some comfort. "Wide choice of stars to suit every pocket." "What are you talking about?" "Sorry, it's the sort of thing Arnold Brothers, established 1905, writes on the signs. I just feel better for saying it." "What's the other thing up there?" He looked where she was pointing. "That? It's a chair. Swivelled finish for that executive look." "It looks big enough for humans," she said thoughtfully. "I expect humans sit there when Arnold Brothers, established 1905, is giving them their instructions." She said. There was a clinking noise by her head. "Sorry," Masklin called down. "It took me a while to hook them together." Gerda looked up at the heights and the gleaming chain that now hung down. "Paper clips?" he said, amazed. "I never would have thought of it." When they clambered to the top, they found Masklin wandering across the shiny surface, prodding things with his spear. This was paper, Gerda explained area, and the things for making marks. "Well, Arnold Brothers, established 1905, doesn't seem to be around," Masklin said. "Perhaps he's gone to bed or whatever." "The abbot said he saw him here one night, sitting at the desk right here," said Gerda, "watching over the store." "What, sitting on that chair?" said Grimmer. "I suppose so." "So he's big then, is he?" Grimmer pressed on relentlessly. "Sort of human size?" "Sort of," Gerda agreed reluctantly. Maskin found a cable as thick as his arm winding off across the top of the desk. He followed it. "If he's human-shaped and human-sized," said Grimmer, "then perhaps he's... Let's just see what we can find up here, shall we?" said Gerda hurriedly. He walked over to a pile of paper and started reading the top sheet by the dim light coming in from the corridor. He read slowly in a very loud voice. "The Arnco Group," he read, "incorporating Arnco Developments UK, United Television, Arnco Schultz, Hamburg, AG, Arnco Airlines, Arnco Recording, the Arnco Organisation, Cinemas Limited, Arnco Petroleum Holdings, Arnco Publishing, and Arnco UK Retailing plc. "Gosh," said Grimmer flatly. "There's more," said Gerda excitedly, in much smaller letters. Perhaps they're meant to be right for us. Listen to all these names. Arnco UK Retailing plc includes Bonded Outlets Limited, the Grindthorpe Dye and Paint Company, Quick Clean Mechanical Sweepers Limited, and And something wrong? Arnold Brothers established 1905. Gerda looked up. What do you think it all means? Bargains galore preserve us. There was a light. It skewered down on the two of them, white and searing, so they stood over a black pool of their own shadows. Gerda looked up in terror at the brilliant globe that had appeared above them.